Hi, welcome back, Delboy's Garage. This is part 21 now, coming of age of Project Bandit Us. And now today's going to be indicators. I want to sight these somewhere that's going to work with the visual effect of the back end. And they are LED, so there's more to it than just bolting them on and plugging the wires in. I've got to use a couple of these little resistors just to reduce the current, because LEDs draw less current than regular bulbs for less period of time, so these resistors will stop them flashing too fast, which is an MOT failure. There's a level I knew once, I don't know how many, it's only allowed to flash so many times a minute for MOT tests to be legal, and these will reduce them to the correct amount. Also, I've had these for years. I bought them for my first rat build, Project Rage, which was loads of years ago now, and I didn't use them in the end because I stuck with the visual indicators, but I've still got them. They were about £10 each, little brass sneaky resistors, and they are rather funky actually. I'm going to make a feature of them. They're going to get kind of screwed to with some self tappers to the deck of the board, so that when you take off there's all the electrics, they'll look quite neat. They're all plugged in. Another opportunity to make some really neat wiring, which I'm going to do in the future. Wiring does take a long time. Now these got a pair of them, and they're all alloy. They're quite solid. So I'm going to mount them with a bit of a rubber mount, like a bit of a rubber washer, so that they don't, I don't know, it's just so that there's not too much vibe going through them. I want them not too solidly mounted to the frame, so that they move. Not too much, just enough to absorb a bit and not to bust the little LEDs in them. They are very good quality, so they should be fine, but the most important thing to me is the visual effect. The visual is what all this is about. This is just a visual makeover, and where they go on the tail end, I don't know. So that's all it is today. It's not going to be a fantastically long one. It's not going to be another half an hour one or anything. This is just to see where I can sight these, where I can fit them, that they look right, and then get them bolted in, get the wires prepped and ready, and then the next one I can get back into that business of routing wiring and getting it looking good. I've got plenty of wiring, plenty of connectors now, so I can do a good job of it. But for now, I'm just going to drill some holes to see where I can fit these. Stick around. Right. One of you guys come up with a pretty cool idea of mounting them down on the swinging arm, very much like choppers do, which I've seen in the US. And cool idea, great, absolutely love it, brilliant idea, because they're out of the way, very easy to just run the wiring up to where it needs to join up, and they're completely unobtrusive. You wouldn't even know they're there. You could just make a little bracket, probably there's a little bracket there already, which exists. Wouldn't be difficult to make up a secondary bracket, bolt them in there, job done. But the problem is, the UK, for MOT, again, they have to be 12 inches off the floor, and at that height you'd have to have, that's about there from the bottom of the tyre, and there's nowhere, unless you put them up on stalks, which starts to look a bit daft and counteracts the fact that it would look neat to have them down here, you know, right in the back on the tail end or something like that. So that's not going to work. They're just too low. Unless I put a 20-inch wheel on it, which would be cool, then that's not going to happen. So I'm going to pop them on the tail, and thinking of where, there's obviously, this is the frame, this is the strength bit of the frame with the battery box in. The wiring's definitely got to go into the battery box, because I'm going to connect everything inside to keep it out of the way, and then it can go into the loom from there. But I'm thinking the best place is going to be just in here, literally right in the battery box there, right in nice and snug, so they sit as close to that frame as possible. And then when I bring the tail up, actually let's show you a bit closer. Come on over. This is hang on, let's spin that around. There we are. This is one of the lugs that I've welded on, which later on will be, it's just been pilot drilled for a minute. That will be drilled out to the right size and then threaded for the initial weld plate to go on, to then start making the frame. The other one of which is there. So the frame will come along here, the seat unit along the top to keep the trellis showing. Obviously all this will be tidied away by then. So that lug, the frame, is going to come from there. So mounting this a little bit further into that box, I'm thinking in that space there, right in the corner, it's going to come in quite high. It's going to come in just above the frame, so it's neat, but also it's outside of that lug, so that the body, the actual plastic bodywork that I'll make, the fiberglass bodywork, will come up and over the top of this. So this will actually just peep out the bottom corner of the tail hump. I'm going to do this calf racer tail hump thing, perhaps a different lean on it, curve it round the light and French a little bit over the top with a bit of a hood or cap, and then come round, and I can come over the indicator there and just run it down and off the frame. So it's all kind of working. That physically works to just bolt them in there. So all I'm going to do is drill 2 holes in there correctly, possibly work out the best way to grommet them. Have a little bit, have a look. I've got this box with wonderful odds and ends. It's things like rubber. I always keep everything, a bit of a hoarder. So I'm just going to have a little rummage in the midst of it all through here. Things like that, plastic gaskets, so useful for bolting things together. And I've also got these big plate washers, which were from the trailer. That was the initial trailer build, and they're 2mm thick, stainless, but they're painted over. Well, I don't know if they're totally stainless or they're zinc maybe, but anyway, I've got half a dozen of them. So there we are, that's all it is for today. I'm just going to try and see if I can find the right stuff in amongst this lot that I can use to mount them there, give them a little bit of flex. They won't be too solidly bolted because although that is very stiff, it should still do the job just fine. So let's get the drill out and mark the right place to stick the pilot hole. Just as a quick demo, just to show you just how time consuming this is, just little daft things. Now this is obviously a cast steel body or alloy body with a little flap there to hold with an open-ended spanner, so you hold it still, and then you do the nut up when it's done. Because I want to kind of slightly rubber mount that, very slightly. I just want to do it softly. I don't want to bolt it up completely tight. I'm going to kind of washer either side with like a rubber gasket in between, and then put 2 nuts on, effectively double nut it. So you put a nut on to a softness that allows it to move a bit, and then you wind another nut on the back to lock against the first nut so it doesn't back off, because if it isn't done up tight it will just back itself off. So I just need another one of them. So here's the sort of daftness that you end up with, trying to find another one of those nuts. I've got boxes of nuts and bolts, but finding the right ones, you've got to find a bolt first of all that's the right pitch and thread as that, so I can use it as a tool to find the right nut, the same as that. Just the sort of thing that rolls projects on. Just means you come in the garage to have a little fiddle, do a little bit of work, and you find you're still at it an hour later and all you've done is screw 2 bolts in. Got it, right. Perfect fit. Right, so that thread there is the same as that thread there. It's a fine imperial thread because these are for a Harley. So that's an old Harley stand bolt which I've kept for years. So just need to find 2 more of them to fit that. Right, struck out so far. I set myself a limit when I'm doing this crap. That's the original bolt. Now that's the correct fastener. So I know that bolt is an example of the thread. So what I'm going to do is cut that there, because I've done this before. Stand there raking. That's 15 minutes raking through those. And like I said, if you've been there before, you can spend hours and hours raking through looking for one nut and you don't find it. So I have to set myself a limit, otherwise you'll be still there at Christmas. All these, not the right size. Not even going to go there. So all I'm going to do is bolt them in. The wiring will be kind of plug in and unpluggable, so I'll come back to that thread later on when I've got some more time and find it when I'm not busy. So for now I'll just use the single nut that they come with. I'm pretty sure they're just an AF probably, I don't know, but I can't find anything in all that's the same size. And that is the way it goes with projects. You just end up looking for hours for the same stupid little bit, and in the end you have to accept you haven't got it. Right, so crack on. I'm going to drill some holes instead, much more fun. Everything works better if you mark it. I'm going to pop it about there. I think they'll be 9 inches apart. Well, they're literally 10 inches apart then, so that's no excuses from the member certificate. Just give it a gap above the frame of about 2mm so it doesn't foul on that. Okay. That should be the correct height. We measure that from the base, 15mm, which means correspondingly 15mm the other side. And then we'll look cockeyed. Set 10mm. Symmetry is quite important. Right. Obviously, the other idea is that mounting them quite close to the corner of the box gives strength. If they're in the middle, there's flex in the middle of the sheet. So if they're right in the corner, as it were, that will give it some strength. So. Okay, one hit. That's it. So they should now sit exactly symmetrical in height and forward, I hope. Right. 3mm to get us off on the way. Right, and I think the hole in the shaft measuring the shaft is 9mm, so it's clearly imperial or AF or whatever old-fashioned measurement. Right. Nice, perfect round hole. Right. Little deburr. Right, just a little test fit. Check these holes are the right size. Now it's a little bit perfect fit, and that puts them just like I wanted, just outside of this. So the bodywork will come along here, up, over the top and around, and they'll literally just peep out the bodywork by that much, which is exactly what I think we need. Anyway, let's bolt them in. Right, going to use a couple of these old fat plate washers. They're good 2mm thick, real solid. Just going to use them to beef up the sheet metal. It's going to bolt them in the series of washers and odds and ends just to thicken things up and give a bit of strength so the indicators don't move. If they're just bolted through sheet metal, it's not enough, but bolted through that as well will be cool. But they don't currently fit, they're only an 8mm hole. So I'm just going to take two of them and lob them out to 10mm, just so the holes are big enough. Probably not the conventional way to make washers bigger, works nonetheless. a little bit. Right, 2 canny washers, they'll do the job. Okay. Wrong washer. Now I'll later on come back to these with another of these nuts, just to double nut that, lock it on. But for now they'll do. I'll probably take them off again yet before they're finished, certainly in the process of wiring them. Right, that's the first one. Get one in. Like that. Nice snug fit as it is. Now, I thought of doing these, as I said earlier, contrary to what I said, I thought of doing them as a little bit of a rubber mount, but I think that's possibly a mistake, just on the basis that they're not designed to be rubber mounted. If they were, they'd have a rubber mount. So I'm just going to mount them with a good firm solid washer, and I would imagine that'll be okay. Washer. And once they're, this is just literally a straightforward, just mounting them in, so I can look at where the wiring's got to go and mount the resistors, and start thinking about soldering them or pinching them or whatever's going to be the right way. Delete where appropriate. The beauty of these, they're mounted in sheet metal, so I can just bend them a little bit. Sheet metal that's never going to get seen. That's it. There we are. Hoping that what I can do now is the bodywork will come to this lug. It will bolt to that lug underneath, and I'll just bring it up and over in at an angle and then down and round. That's the plan anyway. That is the loose idea. Indicators fitted, and as far as legality is concerned, they've got to be 9 inches apart, and they are happy 11, so they're absolutely fine. I'm going to pass MOT, no problem, because I'm going to re-MOT this. It's got an MOT for 12 months, just about 4 or 5 weeks ago, before I started doing this. But I'll do it again, just to be sure everything works. And Mr. Tester's happy. So those now just got to be wired in. Right. Now, just as a mock-up, just to give you an idea, just to show you what I mean, these will look kind of like that. Idea being that'll just for the, yeah, there we are. So they'll do the job. But as you can see, with only an LED on the back, you've got too much current going to the LEDs, and they're not drawing enough current to slow down the flasher unit. Now you can get slower flasher units, but I've got the standard indicators on the front, so if you get a slower flash unit, then it will flash too slow on the front. So I'm just going to stick these resistors in line. That's another wiring job, and you've seen these wiring jobs, you know what they're like. I've been at this 2 hours now, of which half an hour was raking in that sodding box of bolts to try and find 4 decent washers and fasters, which I didn't find in the end anyway, such as the frustrations of projects. So they're sitting neatly for the next video. I'll be wiring those in, thinking of the best way to connect them. They come with these little pegs on the end, and all I want to do with those, I don't know, I don't want to solder them because they crack. I'm just going to find a way. I'm thinking that perhaps a spade, a female spade terminal will go on that quite nicely, and where it's got a hole I can lock wire through it and then solder the wire, so it'll be on there, it'll be pinched on with a crimp, but effectively I can then crimp the wire in and it'll be lock wired and soldered through, so it'll be permanent in that sense. So I just have a little play with those, you know, it's the sort of thing just to make a good job of it. But that's that for now. That's the indicators on, they're mounted, they're where I want them. I can forget about that now. Somebody said it's all looking a little bit bare metal now. Yes, it is, because where you scrape burrs off and stuff, but I ain't bothered. It's when everything's finished I shall mask up the lenses and stuff that doesn't want paint on it, and the wiring that doesn't want paint on it, and then paint everything black so any exposed metal won't rust. But that's it for now. There you go. Thanks for tuning in to WCOs. That's been number 21. I told you it was a bit shorter. Just mounting the indicators, just another little leg. And now, actually, really, there isn't a lot left now before I can start. I just want to get everything wired in and working, fired up, stick a cushion on it, and ride it up and down the road so that I know everything's fine. Nothing works, everything works under load and so on. And then I can start fabricating that tail, which is really what I want to do the most. And I can use my fabulous new weld mask. Fantastic. So, take it easy, ride safe. Thanks for watching. That's the indicators mounted, well chuffed with them, and I'll see you next time.